I'm Lisa Brennan, and I am the Managing Director of a company called Strategic Ambitions, of which Graduate Ambitions is a part of that business. And I set up these Q&A sessions because we were getting lots and lots of questions from the graduates that we worked with around about the job selection process, how to make applications, you know, what really are employers expecting from the candidates that are applying for their jobs, and so on. So I thought it would be useful to connect some students with some expert panel members, and today we've got Annika Hantho from Bank of Montreal, and we've got Onika Gregory from BPP University, and they will both be joining me on the panel to answer the questions that you've got. So we do have some people who are just joining as we're talking through, but I wanted to cover some housekeeping just before we get started. So if you can keep your microphones on mute, I know that you're all currently on mute at the moment, but if you can do that unless you're asking a question, so that we don't have background noise and so on for any of the other participants. And also, it would be good if you had your cameras on. I always suggest this to the participants of these events, because this is a real safe environment where you can come on, you can speak to the panel members, and you can take the opportunity to network and be visible. If you were doing this with an organisation that you were applying for a job with and you had the opportunity to attend an event, the best practice would always be to have your camera on. So if you can put your camera on, it will be nice to have you and engage with you face to face. For questions, we are asking you to type your questions into the chat box, and let us know in the chat box if you're able to ask that question yourself. Now, we would expect that most of you do ask the questions that yourselves, but if you're in a position where perhaps you're in a room with other people or your Wi-Fi is not that stable, then you might prefer to get us to ask the question, and then we can respond to you. So we will be recording today's event, just so that you're aware of that. And there will be an opportunity after the Q&A session for some networking. If you want to hang around for that, then you're more than welcome. So just before we get started, I want to take the opportunity to let Annika and Onika introduce themselves. So I'll pass you over to Annika first, and she can tell you a little bit about herself.
Sure, thank you, Lisa. So hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. So I'm the Talent Acquisition Specialist for BMO Financial Group. I am based in London, but I support all of the EMEA region. And that means I support from internship all the way to really the head of any department or sector. So very involved in the recruitment and interview stages. I've been with BMO now for almost 10 years. I did join as an intern, so my internship became a full-time opportunity, so happy to answer questions about that as well. And yeah, I look forward to your questions today. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Annika. Onika?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Onika, and I'm Head of Careers at BPP University on the business school side. I've been at BPP for just over 9 years. I started off initially as a careers consultant and then moved into the head of careers role. I've also worked for a local authority in the learning and development team, and have also worked for a large retail organisation in HR as well. So thank you very much for having me as part of the panel, and for Lisa for inviting me along and to participate today.
No problem at all. It's great to have you. So we have a question that has been submitted already by Zenadine Shabazz. I don't know if Zenadine is on the call, if they've dialed in yet, and I just wasn't sure if if there's anything wanted to ask the question themselves. Nope, that's fine. I can talk through the question that they have submitted and what they're wanting to know, and I'm sure actually it's a really good question and it's quite a difficult question. So I'm sure they will be there will be many of you that want to know the answer to this as well. What they want to know is, what is the difference between an outstanding application and like just an average application? What makes a candidate stand out in their application? So I don't know what your thoughts might be on that, Annika.
I think the names are going to get confusing. I guess start. I think it really is no secret sauce, if you will, but I can tell you what I look for and what I specifically think does make an application stand out. I think the first and foremost is that if the application says it requires a cover letter and a CV, make sure you do submit both, not just a cover letter or not just a CV. Make sure you submit the full application that's requested. Also to make sure, specifically with the CV, to make sure the CV is tailored to that you're applying to. So for example, if it's quite a technical job, make sure you highlight those skills that you have, that pertain to the job. So when you look at a job spec, often there's some keywords that maybe throughout the job description. A tip and a trick is to make sure those are also in your CV and perhaps also in your cover letter. So I think that's very important. Obviously, spelling mistakes, that's a big one for me. And also easy to read. Make sure the structure works well. The common mistake is people often just put paragraphs or maybe make it look cool, different formatting and boxes and color. It just makes it so complicated. Make sure it's just easy to read. Anyone can look at the CV and knows what it's saying, kind of knows who you are as a candidate for the role, instead of having to spend, a minute, 2 minutes on the CV, because most of the time we'll spend maximum 30 seconds reviewing the CV when we do get an application. So just some tips and tricks.
Yeah.
I would also add to that. I would say, ensure you answer the question, especially if they have a set of questions they would like you to address. So I would say, to make sure you read them thoroughly and actually you do answer the question they've actually asked. I would also say, including things like your extracurricular activities are really important to highlight and make your application stand out more. So, if they're asking for things like teamwork, think outside of things you've done within university. So you may have worked on a group project, but what else have you done that's going to make you stand out a little bit more, which is over and above that? Have you worked on sort of like an external project with an organisation where you've been part of a team, then you've had to maybe present that information to a panel, an external panel? And I would also say things like, if you're part of like an Actus, they do a lot of social enterprise, they do a lot of stuff around sustainability and projects. So I think, your extracurricular activities and what you can add to your application can make you stand out and really differentiate you from other applicants, especially if you have an organisation that is quite passionate about their corporate and social responsibilities. And if maybe you can research the organisation in more detail and tap into, their values and beliefs and how they may align with maybe your values and beliefs, I think also will add a lot of strength to your application. I think you have to think about the thousands of applications they receive, and I think you have to make yours that a little bit more special in order to get through to the next stage of the recruitment process.
Yeah, I can agree with what you have both said more. And I think with the that whole standing out, making yourself different from the other candidates. I mean, if you're studying your qualification, whether that's finance or business or engineering, whatever your qualification is, lots of other people have studied that same qualification. So putting it down on your CV, a list of the modules you've studied, you know, that isn't actually telling the person who's reading that CV anything more than actually they will already know or expect. If they read, oh, that person's done a finance degree, they'll expect that you'll have covered certain things in your course. What they want to know is, how have you applied that learning? And, you know, where have you perhaps done that, whether that's through some of your projects or whether it has been that you have had the opportunity to have a work placement or an internship, whether that's been a virtual internship that we've had over the last year or so, or whether it has been in person. You know, think about how you've actually applied some of the learning that you've got at university in practice. And as Onika said, you know, there is the opportunity there to think beyond what your university experience has been. You know, what is it that you're doing in your own spare time? What is it that you're doing as part of a part-time job that you might have? What is it that you're doing as part of any volunteering or caring responsibilities that you've got? Because these are all real transferable skills that employers look for, and that also makes you employable. They want to know that you can communicate well and work well as part of a team and so on. So I think it's really good to list those things, but also again to try and bring them a bit to life. You know, put a couple of sentences in about, you know, if you are part of a team sport, well, what position did you play and what additional skills does that bring out? You know, how do you talk to that team? How have you helped with team success, or how do you deal with failures as a team? You know, just a couple of sentences can help bring your CV to life, that's got a bit more personality about you, rather than just, this is what I studied and I can work well as part of a team. Because yeah, that is something that lots and lots of people will say. So I would say if you can try to bring the skills and your knowledge and understanding to life as much as possible, that really helps the reader. And yeah, definitely, as Annika said, do it in a format that's easy to read. Yeah, boxes down the side, different colours, different fonts and all that. It's really difficult for the reader to look at, especially when you're looking at maybe a batch of 50 or 100 CVs at the one time. Your colour might stand out, but actually if it's not easy to read, it can very quickly put you into the no pile. So you have to be able to get into past that first sift, you know, yeah, that's interesting to me, so that goes in that pile. No, that just doesn't, you know, it's difficult to read. So again, that's an example of communicating with people. So you want to make sure that you're very clear and you know, as I said, that it's easy for the reader. So yeah, they are I would say some great tips that help you to stand out from just being an ordinary application. So we have a question here from Ariba. Ariba, I don't know if, are you wanting to talk through your question?
Hi, yeah, definitely I can do that. Hi everyone, it's really nice to meet you all. So I just have a question which is a little bit different. So I have actually done an internship at Microsoft as well for a year, but still I just feel like that I find it very difficult to find a graduate role. Firstly, because I'm an international student, so I can't work for every company. So my restrictions and my because I need a sponsor letter and everything, so my search already goes like really low. Like I don't have many options, and the options I apply for, either they will be looking for like really technical roles and will not have business or customer success kind of roles, which I'm really passionate about. So I just kind of feel feel I don't know where to start looking, because wherever I have looked, either those roles are not available or they can't sponsor me. So one way or the other, I'm not able to secure a job. So I just wanted to kind of hear from you guys as to like where to start and how to just go on about it.
Mm. It's really difficult for our international students, especially at the moment. I would say that maybe companies are offering less opportunities in the current environment. I don't know, Annika, what your experience of this is at BMO or you know, other companies that you've heard about so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a big company or a big organization to sponsor candidates for roles. Can you hear me? Yeah. But we do. Yeah. Okay, great. So since we are a big company, we do candidates for roles. I think where we often find it's perhaps a bit more difficult for graduates to obtain roles with sponsorship. And that's where I really do encourage networking. I think networking is really, really important because, again, if we have the recruiting for approval to sponsor, then we're just going through the applications. But if you reach out to the hiring manager, maybe tell them why you think you're a good candidate for the role, talk about your experience, offer maybe a virtual coffee since we can't necessarily have coffees at the moment, and you know, build your network that way and tell them about your experience and why you think you're, you know, the right candidate for the role and how you'll add value to both the role and the team. Then it can definitely be considered. But I know at the moment it's perhaps a little bit tricky, primarily due to Brexit. But hopefully, you know, come the springtime when things settle a bit more, there'll be more opportunities available with sponsorship.
Yeah. Onika, I don't know if you've got anything to add. I know you work with a lot of international students.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you hopefully by, you know, January next year, I think there may be a different outlook. You know, there are quite a lot of changes coming to the new visa regulations in terms of skilled workers and the postgraduate immigration route. So hopefully these will give international students more opportunity to explore different career options. I mean, just before I came on this session, I was on a webinar about it. So, you know, there will be a lot of new changes, but, you know, until we know what they are, I think, you know, like Annika said, networking, I think, you know, definitely using LinkedIn a lot more and being proactive on LinkedIn. I know Target Jobs is quite a good website because they actually do have a section on their website where you can actually tick and look at organisations that actually do sponsor. So they actually do, you can actually sort of like filter out the organisations that do and the ones that don't sponsor as well. I think also it would probably be good for you to maybe have a sort of like a second maybe career path that you potentially could explore, where there may be more opportunities for you to potentially explore different roles. I know you was talking about sort of like customer service and things like that, but I think you need to look at you know, what other skills you have, what other sort of opportunities you may be open to exploring, because I think once you get into an organisation, you'll always be able to move around into different roles. And I think sometimes it's not necessarily the ideal job that you want, but I think once you actually get your foot in the door and you start to network with the right people inside the business, I think, you know, a lot more doors will actually open. I think you'll also have the opportunity to see lots of internal opportunities within the organisation that are not actually available and advertised outside of the organisation as well. You do have a lot of companies that do like to grow their own talent internally, so they will progress and develop their staff internally. So there's a lot of jobs that you probably wouldn't see, you know, advertised. You know, there's that hidden job market that everyone talks about, and it really does exist. And a lot of it exists through networking and finding the right connections. So I would say, you know, you have to be a little bit more resilient in terms of it, and be able to deal with the knockbacks and rejections. But I think you have to also, you know, explore different avenues, think about where your skills are transferable and different roles that you could actually go into, because every role that you necessarily get into is not always the ideal role. You know, some students are quite fortunate to get that, but not everyone is. And I think it's once you're in a job, it's about building those connections and development. I also try to say to international students that, you know, if all else fails, think about opportunities in their home country. So if you want to work for like a global employer or a big four accounting firm and they're based in your home country, you know, you have the opportunity to potentially look at graduate roles within those organisations or entry level roles. And once you're in there again, you know, they most of them have the intra-country transfer visa where you can actually move around. So, you know, you may not even want to come back to the UK. There may be so many different options in so many different countries across the world. The world is a massive place, and I think, you know, thinking about opportunities back home with big organisations and corporations, and I think building and developing and moving around that way as well. So, you know, I hope that sort of gives you a little bit more of an insight of how you could maybe tap into other ways and opportunities.
Yeah, I really, really agree with that. In fact, Annika is someone who joined her organisation as an intern in one country, and now she's working in the UK. So she's someone who's actually done that.
Yeah, I can definitely echo the internal job posting before going out to market that Annika just mentioned as well. Most companies like ours, we post all roles internally for 2 weeks before going external to, you know, any organize their talent in wants to keep internal, you know, development and from into their career at the company. So yeah, so I definitely think there is opportunity once you're at a company as well to learn about different areas. So if you get a job, you know, if you start a job at a career or your career at a company and you're like, I like it, but it's not totally meeting all my career goals, that's an opportunity for you to network internally, learn about different careers, and then apply to opportunities at that company.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that you've both mentioned already this networking and how important that is. And I think especially at application stage, it's something that you should try to really kind of see as the new normal, as ways of engaging with organisations. A recent survey that was carried out by the Institute of Student Employers showed that previously social media networking had really only been something that companies were doing to kind of market themselves and market the job opportunities. But actually now more than 80% of companies are expecting to use social media networking as an actual tool for recruiting their graduates and students this year. And what they mean by that is that they are expecting candidates to reach out to them, to their employees, to try and foster those relationships so that they can really get to know the candidates and really kind of understand, well, what is driving you to want to work for this organisation? Why are you seeking us out? And really kind of, yes, start to build your network within that organisation before you even submit a job application. And so that's linking in with the people who might be recruiters, but also finding people in that company who do the job that you actually want to apply for or have previously been a graduate, you know, link in with them, and as Annika and Onika have said, then, you know, ask if they've got time for a coffee, or if not, can you send a couple of questions over to them that they can answer. The majority of people out there will want to help you. But just be aware, you might email 10 or 12 people, you might only get 2 or 3 responses. So but when you get the responses, people are very generous with their time. They want to help and support where they can, and if they can then advocate for you and say they've spoken to you and they think that you make a good candidate, then you're already present in the minds of the people that you're going to be part of the selection processes with. So it's a really good way, you know, to do that. And I think as for international students, for all graduates, I always say, you know, what are you willing to compromise on to get the job that you're applying for? You know, because you will have a dream job that you want to get. And for international students, there might be other things that you might need to like compromise on. So for example, there will be certain industry sectors that might not actually be suitable for an international student to work for, you know, things that focus on defence or security and so on. They might only be for, say, UK eyes only or European eyes only, and it's the same in any country, you know, for the defence and so on. And then there will be other organisations where in their industry sector actually it is very specialist work, and so they need people who are experienced, and that experience obviously comes at a price, you know, that employers have to pay in the marketplace, and generally that's not the salary level for graduates. So think about the type of role that it is that you're actually applying for. And then I think, you know, as Onika mentioned before, if you are then going into a job role that is not actually, I suppose, your passion, you know, that, you know, Ariba, you mentioned that you're really passionate about the customer service side of things, but actually you might need to take a more technical role to get into that company and then diversify into another area of the business once you're in there. But understanding, say, a more technical role and perhaps having a better understanding of products or services could actually then make you a better candidate internally for being in a customer service area. So it's always thinking about what's the trade-off, what can you get from the opportunities that are available to you, and then how can you use that to get closer and closer to the job of your dreams, if that's not what you can get straight away. Does that help you, Ariba? Sorry.
Just to add to that, Lisa, as well, I would say, you know, if it's customer service type roles you're looking for, and I would definitely explore sort of like retail banking side, because they have quite a lot of graduate type roles, where they actually do have sort of like the retail side of the banking business is quite customer focused, product services. I'm sure Annika can probably chip in here a little bit. And then you sort of like have the sort of like the investment side banking of the business as well. Then you have front office and back office. But, you know, if you definitely want to look at sort of like the customer relations side, I would definitely probably more explore retail banking initially. And there are quite a few of the retail banks that actually do sponsor. I'm not sure if the applications are still open, but it's definitely worth having a look into those particular areas as well. And also, if you could potentially get yourself a mentor as well, I think that's also a good way to progress as well. And also, they will also have their contacts as well, who they potentially also could put you in contact with as well. So, you know, I would also think about maybe the retail banking side of the business. I'm not sure if Annika wants to add any more to that particular statement.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think the retail banks are great. A lot of them have graduate or rotational opportunities. So that could be a fantastic option to explore. I guess I'll tell you a bit about how I ended up in the job of the day, because it might also benefit all. My internship with BMO 10 years ago, they put me in an HR analytics job. So all I did was just sit at a computer and look at spreadsheets all day. And I quickly realized I actually action with people. So I did go to a program manager who then paired me with a mentor who worked in recruitment. And then I started to shadow that mentor for different meetings, offered help, and eventually ended up in recruitment following my internship in this HR analytics role. So yeah, so again, I think it's, you know, every opportunity is a great opportunity. There's so much to learn, and learn what you like and what you don't like as well. So
really useful. I think definitely using your connections and learning through others are highly, highly valuable. If you get the opportunity to do that, then you should. We have a question from Aidan, and Aidan is battling with the noise from roadworks outside his house, so he has asked if we read this out for him. He's curious about what our take is on if opportunities arise that are away from your home country, do employers favour that more because it shows adaptability and willingness to immigrate, or you know, is it not something that is, you know, favoured over other things? What are your thoughts on that, both of you?
I think definitely exploring opportunities internationally is definitely a way forward. I think organisations like to see global experience on candidates' applications. I had a student who was studying, he was in MSc management, and he went to work, and he was from Uzbekistan, I think, initially, and he went and done an internship in Singapore with Bosch. Singapore, he went over to, and then he done his exam over there as well. He managed to do his exam over there. He managed to arrange to do that, and then he came back to the UK and then worked for Bosch over here for a little bit as well. And then he connected with me on LinkedIn the other day, and now he's back in Singapore working for Mercer's. So he was quite adamant he wanted to gain some global international experience. And I was looking at some employers the other day, and actually they do quite favour it on applicants' CV as well, because you know, the way we're now working, we are working with global clients and global organisations, and you know, I think the experience that you will develop and learn will be invaluable. I think if you're going to want to be leading a team further on down the line, you know, you're going to be able to say, you know, you've led a team from an international perspective. I think also, you know, it's good if you're developing your language skills, understanding about different cultures, how people work differently in different countries as well. So I think, you know, gaining that experience, I think, is something I would always try and encourage students to do. I think the UK will, you know, always have opportunities, but I think if you can get something on your CV that's global, I'm sure Annika will agree with this. I just think, you know, it will open up a lot more doors further on down the line for you. So 100% behind that.
No, I totally agree. You know, I think we live in a global world with global talent, and as Annika mentioned, global client. I think, you know, having a global perspective to you know, whatever sector you're working in is obviously very beneficial. You know, but obviously there are individuals who also don't want to move and, you know, don't want to live around the world. Totally also stay in one country and build your career locally as well. You know, for me, I really wanted to move globally. So we have an internal LinkedIn type of system where you can rank how mobile you are. So I ranked myself to the highest level, and you select your 3 cities. So at the time I put New York, London, Hong Kong, and 3 weeks later got a job in New York. Well, someone messaged me saying, would you be interested? I interviewed, and then moved to New York about a month later. And then 2 years after that, did the same thing. Are you mobile? Said yes. I was very keen to move to Japan or Hong Kong. And so London was my number 3. And there was an opportunity in London. So now I'm in London. So I think, you know, for me, I really wanted to move globally. I, you know, just thought it'd be a fantastic opportunity. And I'm very lucky to have the opportunity to do just that.
Yeah. Very, very good. And I've heard like so many similar situations over the year, so that I think, you know, the more that you're open to, then, you know, the bigger your pool of opportunities is. I think that employers do really like when people, candidates and employees are mobile and they are able to take someone that they think, well, that's someone that's a known quantity to us and we know they can work for us, and then, you know, it's easy to then move them to another location, perhaps sometimes easier than recruiting in that location itself, you know. So if you are able to be mobile, then that does open up those types of opportunities. But companies don't need all employees to be like that. They do need people who also want to stay, you know, locally, in their roles and support local business. So, you know, it's very much, I think, Aidan, a personal choice. If that's something that you're interested in and want to do, then yeah, definitely put that on your CV. It will definitely stretch you. I think getting the opportunity to immerse yourself in another culture is an absolutely fantastic way of building your employability. It tends to be when you look at, especially in global organisations where you have people who are applying for more senior roles or looking to get a promotion, it tends to be looked on more favourably if you've got that experience in more than one region of the world, because if you're going to be heading up an area of the business that covers, you know, global reach, then they want to know that you can understand how the business operates, as Annika mentioned earlier, you know, people work differently in different cultures and different areas of the world, so it's good to have that kind of first-hand experience. So that's something that might not just help your, you know, kind of early career moves, but as you progress further into your career as well. So yeah, some real good advice there, I hope.
And I also think as well that sometimes in the graduate schemes there are opportunities to be seconded overseas as well as part of your graduate rotation. So if you are fortunate enough to have that embedded within your graduate programme, even better, because then you'll know if it's for you or if you just want to be one person who wants to stay put. You know, who's to say, you know, you can't be based in London, but you know, your head of your department is also based in Singapore, so you know there's going to be some travel to be able to go over there. You know, you know, they might want you to stay for a week or so, and you might get sort of like a bit of a feel of what it's like over there as well. So, you know, definitely don't push it to one side. It's definitely something to worthwhile explore, and if the opportunity is definitely there, and you don't feel like you're going to be too homesick or lost, then I would definitely and strongly encourage you to pursue it. I know quite a few of our students as well who get graduate jobs don't necessarily have the graduate job in London. They've secured their graduate job outside London as well. So I would always encourage students to look outside of London for graduate opportunities, because they are slightly easier to get. Maybe not so much in the climate now, but generally they are slightly easier to get. And I think also the experience that you probably will get will be a lot more enriching as well, because they tend to have smaller offices, and so you'll get the opportunity to work on more bespoke projects, you know, probably take on more leadership roles, and so your skills will probably develop far more quicker than someone who's working in a massive team in London and doesn't have that same exposure. So I would always encourage to look at opportunities outside London, and I think a lot of the international students I've worked with of recently have all got jobs outside of London.
I think that's a good tip, actually, just when you're doing your job search. And I know that Laura's put the link for target jobs in the chat, and some of you will already be familiar with that, but I know it was mentioned earlier, so the link's on there. But I think when you're doing any kind of job search for you know, early career positions, I would have don't you know, minimize your location, you know, too close to home. Always put in United Kingdom, because a lot of companies, it might say London, but actually they are recruiting for positions across the UK, or UK and internationally. But there are limits to when you're actually posting a job on one of these job boards. There are actually sometimes limits on how many locations you can put in. Certainly on LinkedIn, you can actually only put the location you're recruiting for, and employers won't put like 6 or 7 adverts on for one job, you know, because that will cost them money. So they'll just put, you know, this is where we're headquartered. But actually, when you look at the job, there might be opportunities that are closer to home to you, if that's what you're looking for, or internationally, if that's what you're looking for too. So yeah, there is, I think that's a good point that Anika's made about, you know, where is it that you're looking to be located. So yeah. And I think Ariba's also asked on here, Annika, if BMO are hiring at the moment, and she's asking specifically about business management and customer service roles, but I know you said you would send the link for that, for the roles that they are recruiting for.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share in a moment. I can try to see if I can copy and paste it into the chat. So I can send you a link to our careers page, and then also recruitment email address if you just have a question or want to see if we have opportunities in any specific role. You can send an email to that email address and someone will get back to you.
Okay. And so we have another question. Sorry, I was bringing that up. So Falak, I know earlier on we spoke about extracurricular activities and projects, but Falak is asking, you know, how useful are those when it comes to your CVs and applications? So they've got a lot of projects that they're part of, and he started some actually on his own that aren't related to the course. So you know, kind of more extracurricular. And he's asking, is it beneficial to include this information in applications and interviews, etc.? My short answer to that would be yes, but I'll let Annika and Onika expand on that, and then I'll come back.
Sure, sure, I can go. No, I think it's hugely valuable. I think you know, really any information in a CV that you think is beneficial to the job is important to include. Because again, that's all we see, right? So when you send your application, we haven't met you before. So, you know, but I think if you include any extracurricular, whether it's sports, it's projects, it's different teamwork activities, then you can absolutely include it. And then of course, in an interview, if someone asks you, can you tell me about a time where you know, you led a project, and how to go, you don't have to focus on any work experience or maybe, you know, something happened in class. You can use an example from outside of both school and work. So if there's any extracurricular involved in maybe a sports team, you know, you can really use any of your experience for in the interview process.
To add to that, it's really invaluable to have it on your CV. It's so important. It really showcases you as a very well-rounded student, someone who's able to manage their time effectively, someone who is able to multitask, but also it gives the employer the opportunity to see a different side of you. You know, and when they're asking you questions about, you know, what motivates you, like strength-based questions, it is like thinking about, you know, things about what you do outside, what do you enjoy doing outside of your studies? And there are a number of employers that actually do ask this question on application forms, like specifically about extracurricular activities. So it's really important that you really try to work on them and develop them. I always try to encourage students to try and do these in the first year and the second year, to try and do as many as possible, because when they come to their last year, they just don't have the time. So they really want to focus on getting their grades up and focus on their last years of the studies, especially if they've got to do things like dissertations. So we try to encourage students to do as much extracurricular activities early on at the start of their course. You know, we have had students who have set up their own clubs and societies at the university. You know, so if you're sort of like the leader of the club or society, you know, that's showcasing your leadership role. You know, if your university has an actors, that's also a great society to join, because it's not just Enactus is not just within your university. They're a global society where lots of different universities have Enactus, and a lot of employers support Enactus as well. And some of our students have done some really good projects with Enactus, and also it gives you the opportunity to present to a very large audience and to get challenged by some very challenged questions on the panel. And I just think, you know, it's a good way for students to develop their skills, particularly students who don't have a lot of work experience. You have to find a way in which you can showcase your skills. It's not acceptable for you just to say that you have, you know, excellent teamwork skills or leadership skills or communication skills. How much better would it look if you said, you know, you had developed excellent communication skills by being sort of like a tutor to sort of like a young person? How great would it look to say that you was a mentor to a young person and you've done different activities with them during a mentoring session? How much more valuable would it look to say that, you know, you set up your own club and society, that you recruited people to this club and society? So you have to think about all the different skills that extracurricular activity is showcased. And I think a lot of students don't see the value in it. I think they just think, oh, it's just a tick box exercise. But actually, when you get to that interview and they start asking you questions about it, especially if it's something they're quite passionate about themselves, you know, it can be a really good conversation. And, you know, you will be so surprised how many skills you can actually showcase from that one extracurricular activity that students just overlook, and they don't actually see what the skills are until you actually start breaking it down to them and say, you know, well, what about this? Did you develop this? You know, when you was having group discussions about what event you was going to be putting on, who was challenging you within that group? Who did you not agree with? How did you come to a final agreement that this was what the process that you was going to go with? You know, who didn't pull their weight in that group? You know, who did you have to challenge and say, well, why are you not turning up for the meetings? Why have you not contributed to the group session? And these are things that you're going to face in the daily workplace, day in and day out. People who don't come to the table with what they're meant to, people who haven't read that email properly and answered that question. And if you can, you know, showcase all these things for your extracurricular activities, you know, it's just going to, you know, put you in a much better position and actually give you some really good experience that you probably thought that you didn't have, and actually you have got, and now you've got something to talk about and write about. So I'm a massive go-getter for extracurricular activities.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, I think I supported a company last year, a manufacturing company, with their recruitment campaign, and the graduate that actually the business was fighting over who would get this candidate, the reason he stood out was because he played the French horn, and he had actually gone on to play the French horn at the BBC Proms when he was 18 years old. And so they just felt that in itself marked, you know, a lot of commitment. It demonstrated his dedication to craft. It showed that he was able to really balance having that extracurricular activity along with his studies. You know, he got a 2:1 degree, but he was still, you know, then working towards his craft in terms of his musical talent. And I think it's really important when you are thinking about that, you know, what is it that you're doing outside of university, you know, that's not so formal, that can also show that, you know, perhaps it's something you've taught yourself if you're a self-taught musician, or even, you know, it's something that you do to perhaps just make sure that your well-being and your mental health is also kind of looked after, because students and graduates have so many plates to juggle. You know, you've got you know, your studies, your exams, you're looking for work. There's pressure on you to be present on social media. There's pressure on you to volunteer, to have a part-time job, to get an internship, you know, to tick all of these boxes, you know. But it's really, really important that you make time for you, and you do some of the things that you enjoy and you're passionate about. And if that's like meditating or being able to socialize with friends, you know, that's really, really important to call out that you do these things, because you want to take care of your own mental health as well. And so important for employers to know that you're aware of your own mental health and how important that is. You know, that also makes you employable to them. You know, they want to make sure that, you know, they've got people who have got that level of self-awareness about when they need to slow things down a bit, you know, and that they can have conversations about mental health, and there's no stigma around about it. So being able to call that out and talk about that in a selection process is really quite a valuable thing to be able to do. So yeah, employers don't tend to shy away from those things anymore. I know they used to, but now, you know, that's just as important for your own engagement with the business as anything else.
And just to add to the fact of sports is a very good one. Now, I had a student who was an ice skater. I mean, she learned to ice skate from the age of like 5, and you know, she went to compete at national level for her country. And you know, there's a lot of skills within being an ice skater. You know, you have to be very disciplined. You know, you're getting up, you're training at ridiculous hours of the morning till late in the evening. You know, you're having to meet with your coach. You know, you're having to look at, you know how you structure your session, the learning that you get from that. You know, when you don't do so well, how you remain motivated, how you pick yourself back up. You know, there's a lot of technical ability within it, and there's also a lot of self-motivation as well within that, a lot of determination, and I think, you know, resilience as well. And these are all skills that, you know, are really, really important. So I think, you know, sports do play a really key part. I think they showcase a lot of skills, and I just think it's how you articulate them in your application is going to make you either a standout person. You can just say, I participated in ice skating for 6 years and I competed at national level, or I competed at ice skating for 6 years and I was able to develop these skills, I was able to develop this technical ability, I was able to keep motivated by X, Y, and Z, I was resilient. Tells a whole different story and shines light on a whole different person.
Definitely. And I think I know that and probably definitely when I was applying for jobs when I left school, it was always something that you did, that you put your hobbies and interests on your CV. I think probably about, you know, 15 years, even 10 years ago, that fell a bit out of favour. Companies were a bit like, you know, don't put that on your CV, it's not relevant, you know, what does that tell me about how well you can do this job, you know. So it kind of fell a bit out of favour to have, you know, your hobbies and interests on your CV. But I think now, as Onika has mentioned and Annika already, it's so important actually to show that you are a well-rounded person, and it's also good to demonstrate that your employability and your skill set doesn't just come from what you've learned through academia at university. It's about how you're applying your skill set, and it's also demonstrating that you can, like, work with other people, and you can communicate, and you can be empathetic, and you can apply your skills in different settings. So I think it is more and more so becoming, again, important to have all of your kind of hobbies and interests on there, but in a format that demonstrates, you know, as we've also already said, you know, in a way that demonstrates this is the skills that you have, and this is what makes you more employable than another candidate that's perhaps applied.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's like the differentiator that we were discussing earlier on in the session.
Yeah, and because Sean has asked, and this will probably be the kind of final question. Sean's asked about the fact that the sports are maybe not always competitive. Is that still worth mentioning, or is there something more that can be done? So I think it's about, it doesn't need to be a competitive sport. It is about, you know, what you're learning, and how you're using that experience, and what about those experiences have you had, you know, about how perhaps even how you learn, how have you developed, you know, the skill in that particular sport. You know, doesn't need to be that you're playing in some football league or anything like that. It's the kind of additional transferable elements of that, how you build up your knowledge and experience in that particular sport, and then how you apply it, and how you then can then say, well, this is a skill, so if I've got that in this particular sport, I can actually use this in your business. So it's being able to highlight that, and that's why it's so important to target your applications actually, and understand the particular values or behaviours that companies are looking for. What are the words that they're using in their adverts and on their website? You know, if they talk about collaboration rather than teamwork, then that's the word you want to use on your CV, is collaboration. I mean, it's in essence talking about the same thing, but if that's the meaningful word in that organisation, and that's what the recruiters are going to be looking for, then that's what you should be using and pulling out from all of your experience. So yeah, Sean, it definitely doesn't need to be competitive to be a valuable experience to put on your CV. Don't know if Onika or Annika, have you got anything else you want to add before we close out?
I would just say, you know, you've got to persevere. You know, it's tough and it's competitive, and we all know what it's like. I mean, I'm sure if I was to apply for a job now, I'd probably be disastrous. I think I'd also find it really competitive and challenging as well. But, you know, you have to keep going, because something will come at the end of it. You know, when I've worked with students, they've had many knockbacks. You know, I just say to them, you know, you just got to keep going, because they've learned from that process, and now they have an idea of what to expect. So they're a little bit more geared up for it now, and they have a bit more of a clearer understanding of the process. And I would say that a lot of our students who weren't successful in their first year of applying for like internships or summer internships or insight days, when it came to applying for the graduate jobs, they actually nailed it. You know, and they got a lot of interviews and they got through to the final stage. So, you know, that learning really helped them through the process. So, you know, I always say to students, you have to think widely, and you have to think broadly. I always say to them, you know, if you have a number of companies that you really have a desire to work for, then you apply to all of those ones that you have a desire to work for. But then you need to have an alternative and a backup plan. And you must always have a backup plan if your approach, what you're going for in the first instance, doesn't work. And always think of opportunities near and far, not just where you're currently living as well. And, you know, utilise the career service at your university, because they're supportive, and they probably have a lot of things that you haven't tapped into, that if you leave it too late, you're going to really miss the opportunity. So, you know, go to all those employer talks, try and do the employability awards they have, or the different programs, be parts of the clubs and societies. It's not forever, it's just to help you get through the process. And so I would strongly encourage you to tap into a university and book your first careers appointment if you haven't already done so.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think also, I mean, you learn from every experience, whether good or bad, whether it's an interview, work experience, networking. even a course or extracurricular, you're continually learning. So really make them do that. And also practice if you are interviewing, for a role or it's interview season, practice with friends or even in front of a mirror or record yourself, whatever you feel most comfortable. But I think practice is so important. As mentioned before, you can really use any experience to answer a lot of different questions. So, you always kind of know what type of questions they'll ask in a first round interview. Tell me about your experience, how will you add value, why this company, why this role. So make sure you read job spec, make sure you have some answers. It does take some practice, not gonna lie, it takes some time as well, but it's all worthwhile. It's not wasted time. Again, every experience is important. And then, I think use your network and the resources available to you. So sessions like this are fantastic. You can learn a lot from these. Also, resources at your university are very helpful online. There's, so much. LinkedIn as well always has some great resources there. So, use the resources you have available, use your network, and yeah, I wish you all the best of luck. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you so much, both of you, Annika and Onika, for joining me today on the panel. It's been really good to hear all your insights and advice, and I hope that for all of you students, it's been beneficial. We will be messaging out to you following on from this for some feedback. It would be really helpful to get some feedback on what you think went well about the session and what actually you think we could improve on, or if there's something else you want to hear about in future sessions, then please let us know. We really value that feedback. There's also some links that Laura's been posting in the chat that you can have a look at and get access to, that might be helpful for you. And we also will be sharing with you the link to get some discount from the Graduate Ambitions coaching programme, should you want to join that. And the code for that will be DEC for December QA, and so you can use that and join us for more support. There's also a lot of free resources and tools on our membership site, so you can sign up to that. You will get additional information about the future events, and also, as I said, any kind of the free tools and resources that we post on there that we're building on at the moment to help you as you go through your transition from university into the workplace. There's also space on there that you can set up a call with me directly, just to get some time to talk about your own kind of career direction and next steps if you want to do that. So I will end the kind of Q&A part of this session now. I mean, we are still available. I know that Annika and Onika need to drop off because they still have some additional work activities to do this afternoon. But I'll still be around for some networking, so for a bit more informal Q&A, or to ask if you've got any questions you want to know about how you network, or anything like that, then please stay on and we can talk a bit more after we stop the recording. So thanks so much for all your questions and your time, and thanks again to the panel and to Laura for supporting in the background and keeping things running. Thank you very much.